Hey guys, this is Doug with fellowshipofthemartyrs.com. I've been feeling the urgency more and more to do this video. It's been hard to get time to do a video because it's loud at the house and there's people all around all the time, and I pretty much got to do them late at night just so my phone won't ring and we don't have people coming and going and banging and clanging and whatever. But by then I'm usually really tired because we got a full day of stuff, just keeping up with everybody and keeping 40 little bottoms of toilet paper and everything else that has to get done. So, but anyway, this is come up again lately. I know that some of my videos are tremendously challenging to the status quo, which I think is what's supposed to happen and what I'm for in large part. So much of what we've been doing is wrong, and people know it's wrong. Pastors all the time preach about how this is the Laodicean age and we're the sleepy, rich, fat church of Laodicea, but they don't know what to do about it or how to make it stop, and they pretty much got to acknowledge that they're part of it. Okay, so if we are all of that, how did we get there? How bad is it, and what do we need to do different? And if you decide to go down that rabbit hole, you're going to find that it goes really, really deep. That lots and lots about what we do is influenced by the pagan models of the Roman Empire, that high priests and royal and garb and candles and pews and incense and censers and all the whole kinds of stuff is basically temple worship. That the pointy thing on the top of our building is a phallic symbol. That layers and layers of stuff we take for granted is actually very, very wrong. And a lot of the teaching, all the way from tithing to deacons to pastors to marriage to whatever, is really, really wrong. Now, there's a particular thing that I'm sure is going to cause a huge stink, and I'm sure is going to get me into trouble, and I'm sure that I'm right about this. The Lord has made it real clear to me that He is my husband, and that He wears the pants, and that He's the boss, and that when He speaks, I should submit and obey. Now, if Jesus, who is my husband, comes out of my wife's mouth, then I need to say, "Yes, Lord," and hang my head and do whatever it was that Jesus just said to me. Now, it may look like I'm submitting to her, but I'm not submitting to the her in her. I'm submitting to Jesus in her. And that's right and true. Now, if I say something to my wife and it's Jesus, then she needs to hang her head and say, "Yes, Lord," and do whatever I said, because that's her husband. Now, if the Doug in me speaks, she needs to probably ask the Lord to kill it, or hide it or bury it or whatever, because I don't expect her to obey the Doug in me at all. She needs to obey the Jesus in me, and if it should happen that demons speak out of me, she needs to rebuke it and get it off of me and get me free. All of that to say that whoever in the relationship is more consistently getting Jesus to come out of their mouth is the spiritual head of the family. You cannot say that God is no respecter of persons, that we are to judge the spirit, not the flesh, and then say that God is intensely interested in the sack of skin that you're in, and that because you have a penis, everybody has to obey you. No matter how ungodly you're being, no matter how much you're not acting like Jesus, no matter how much you're throwing your weight around. The fact is, Jesus is the head of this family. He should be the head of your family, should be the head of every family, should be the head of the church. And if some guy gets up on Sunday morning, up on a stage, and he's wearing a suit, and he's got a diploma from a seminary on his wall, and he says something that is fleshy and stupid, he needs to sit down, shut up, cover his head, and ask his husband Jesus when he gets home what he should have said. because that's just Jezebel and feminine and Eve in the garden listening to the wrong voice. If the little old lady in the back, who when she prays everything in heaven stops and listens because she's got treasure in heaven built up from 80 years of sacrifice and suffering and whatever, if she's got something to say and she can get Jesus to come out of her mouth more consistently than the guy with the tie, then she's probably the real true elder, and she's the one that ought to be up front talking. Because Jesus is the elder, Jesus is the apostle, Jesus is the head of the church, and he's my husband, and I want to hear from him, not your stupid, yellow, fleshy self. Counseled a sister once. Her boyfriend slash fiance was spiritually beating the snot out of her. Just spiritually beating her down and using institutional church teaching to do it. Anytime she disagreed with him, he said she had a spirit of Jezebel, that she needed to submit, that she had problems with authority, that she wouldn't do what he was telling her to do, that he was the head of the house, that if she disagreed with him in any way, that she was automatically wrong. Now, the problem was he wasn't hearing God. He had all kinds of his own issues, all kinds of his own things that were mangled up, and it was basically just a justification to get her to do whatever he wanted. And the Lord gave me a little snippet of a vision to try and explain to him. And I saw him clubbing a baby seal with a big giant penis. And just like, I don't know, PETA or whoever, you've seen the pictures of those guys out on the tundra beating a baby seal to death. And they don't shoot them because that would hurt the pelt because it's valuable for something. So they just club them to death so that the fur's worth something. And there she was on the ground as a baby seal, bleeding all over the place, pretty white, pristine snow with little baby seal blood all over, and her all bruised up and beaten and battered because he was clubbing her with a giant penis. That's pretty much what we're doing when we say that God is in fact a respecter of persons, and because I have a thing between my legs, you have to shut up and do whatever I tell you. When in fact, she might be the spiritual head of the family, and by spitting on her, you're heaping damnation on yourself because she bears the sword. Because she's the one God's going to back up and God's going to protect. And you better be real careful. Real careful. That stuff in Romans 13 is not about civil governments. It's about spiritual governments. And the spirals, there's all kinds of spiritual government. There's a spiritual government in your home. There's a spiritual government in the ecclesia in your city. There's a spiritual government in the world. And God sets people in place based on the gifts that he gives them and the spiritual authority that they have. Now, if you want to be the head of your family, wash more feet, love her like Christ loves the church, sacrifice more, wait more tables, eat the crumbs at the end, generally set yourself last, and you'll be the head of the family. Make everybody wait on you, have things your way, don't listen to God, don't pray, don't read the Bible. Just generally rely on the fact that you have a penis to be your authority. You're toast. Toast. Because she is going to pass you by and be closer to Jesus, hear better, see more, walk closer. And he'll probably tell her, well done, my good and faithful servant. You got the snot kicked out of you, and you took it and you served in love anyway. And he'll tell you, you're a goat. You need to understand. Here's my warning to the men. If you rely on flesh to be your defender, you're in big trouble. And if you rely on your flesh to be a badge of authority, then you are not spiritual, you are carnal. You are not hearing God, and you're not walking right. You are seeing the shallow, surface level things instead of the spiritual things. And there's a pretty good chance she's going to blow right past you. Now, for the women, if you're getting beat down and he's insisting, if you're in a congregation that says, if you're counseling with a pastor and the pastor says, go home and submit to your husband and do whatever he tells you, no matter how perverted, no matter how wrong, no matter how un-Jesus-y, he's the head of the family, you got to do what he says. Okay? Ignore it. Don't listen to it. It's not biblical. This is a one-on-one relationship you're having with Jesus, and you need to obey him because he's your husband. And if he comes out of your husband's mouth, then you listen and you obey. Anything other than Jesus comes out of his mouth, you're not obligated to obey it. Now, you may listen to Jesus and he'll say, yeah, go along with him even though he's whacked because it's not worth the fight right now, but it's going to heap judgment on his head. Okay, then you're not obeying him, you're obeying Jesus. When my wife says we need to do this, I check with the Lord. If the Lord says no, you don't, then I don't do it. If the Lord says go along with her, I love her, we're going to give her her way on this, that may or may not turn out well, but still, I'm obeying the Lord, I'm not obeying her. For those of you that feel like baby seals, I'm telling you, you don't have to take it. You don't have to take it. That's not Jesus. That's not what he wants. That's not what the Word says. The Bible is not an excuse for them to club you. You need to take authority over it in the name of Jesus, in love, and you need to ask the Lord to show you how to fix it, or get out, or whatever you got to do. How to change that guy so that he can be a servant, so that he can be like Jesus, so that he can be the man of God he's supposed to be. For my part, I want you to know I'm sorry, and I want to apologize to you on behalf of all the men that clubbed you and the church that taught them it was okay. It's not okay. We should have been listening to Jesus. We should have washed you in the Word. We should have washed your feet. We should have loved you like the church. I'm sorry. I pray that things will change. I believe they will. I believe he's coming with a sword. And he's coming with a sword to defend the downtrodden and the wounded and the injured and the outcast, the hated, the reviled, the raped. Don't take joy when justice comes. Don't gloat. And don't participate in injustice. And if you are the spiritual head, and you really are, you really do have a bigger cup of Jesus, whether you're a man or a woman, if you use that bigger cup of Jesus to lord it over somebody, if you gloat in it, if you glory in it, your cup is probably going to shrink really fast. And he will prove to you that you don't have as big a cup as you thought because you're not using it right. The first will be last. If you want to be closer to Jesus, sit at the end of the table. Eat the crumbs. Wear the apron. Expect to be hated and mocked, lied about, shipwrecked, scorned, because that's where Jesus is. And that's what he puts up with from his bride, who's pretty well constantly going her own way. And he loves her anyway and urges her gently and puts up with unbelievable amounts of nonsense. I pray that we would all learn to see the spiritual things, not the carnal. I pray that we would love like Christ, that we would be the men and women of God that we're supposed to be, that we say we are. Because you're not a Christian if you're not acting like Jesus. And if you're not acting like Jesus, you better get about it. Because saying a little prayer ain't going to save you if the rest of your life looks like hell. Thanks for listening. More on the website at fellowshipofthemartyrs.com.